Let me ask you this. Have you ever thought about all the perfect parts of your body? Most people, when asked this, will say no or rarely. This is because of society around us, and unfortunately, children are being affected. In a study from National Eating Disorders Association of 4th grade girls, 80% of them were already on a diet. We're talking about children, young, innocent kids that have just stepped into the world already hating themselves. This was once me. When I was in middle school, I constantly beat myself up, comparing myself to all of my friends and models over the media. I spent hours on end trying to figure out why I was so different and why I had acne and a small everything. I constantly did this and really lost myself. It wasn't until the end of 8th grade where I finally realized that I am me for a reason and I didn't have to change. Now, I'd like to spread the awareness so no one feels that like I did in that moment. Body image doesn't have to dictate us. So we should care about body image because it is a real problem, and it has recently become the highest leading cause of death in adolescents in recent years. Now, body image has been dictating women for centuries now. From the era of Aphrodite to the end of 8th century, it was curvy pear-shaped bodies with bigger breasts as the ideal body image. It continued into World War I, where women wore corsets to get a tiny waist. This reflects today's ideal body image, where more people are starting to wear waist trainers to get that snatched waist. Now, we have been fighting this issue for years now, still went nowhere. It has continued to kill many models and actresses, some even children, through the two most prominent diseases, anorexia and bulimia. Anorexia being you don't eat, and bulimia being you eat and forcibly throw up immediately after. It wasn't until 2007 when Spain finally had enough and established weight minimums for their models in response to the anorexic deaths. Now, I don't know where I was. Now, it wasn't as big enough to get to big model districts like Milan, Paris, and New York, but I will say it was a step in the right direction. Now, to show statistically, 80% of women are unhappy with their bodies, while 45% of women are already on a diet. Now, this is in part because society has become obsessed with the ideal body image, almost to the point it's become a normal. However, it just damages a person physically and mentally. Physically, meaning that anorexia had reached its highest in admissions in the 60s and 70s. Now, society doesn't influence adults as much as it does children, when 1 in 4 children, ranged from 5 to 7, have already been engaged in a dieting behavior, or when child care professionals in the UK have reported seeing body confidence issues in children aged 3 to 5. We're talking about children that should be worried about getting their crust cut off their sandwiches, rather than what their body looks like. With all these social media platforms, Instagram, Snapchat, Hot or Not, TBH, they all have one thing in common: the fact that they use letters, numbers, and emojis to determine a person's worth, mostly girls. What can we do about this? If we spread self-love, peer encouragement, and use our platforms for good and communicate with their peers, we can evidently help our future in humanity. Now, to go in more depth, exposing and having a discussion with a victim beforehand and about what the body can do rather than what it looks like, and exposing them to media so when they go out in the world, they're not surprised at what they receive. And as a parent, because they are the first person a kid sees, helping them setting them up and giving them an example of taking media not so seriously can do a whole lot more than you think. Also, self-love and coming to the consensus that you are you for a reason seems small, but has been known to help many victims. Personally, I self-loved and came out healthier and stronger. Overall, a parent who teaches their child to step back from social media and not take it so seriously is a parent that will be raising their child and saving their life. Just getting to the hub of the issue before it gets any worse is the most helpful. Now, I had said that media was to blame, but an article I read completely demolished that and said that it wasn't media, but rather the people that stand behind it. And it's the biggest pressure are peers. Now, it can be true, But it's completely not. Media is totally to blame. It has influenced women and girls for centuries now dealing with their bodies. And we are more reliant on social media nowadays that has actually dictated most of our major decisions in life. Most teens that spend more time on social media come out with more mental issues compared to those that spend more time on non-screen activities. This is the whole statistic of kids who spend 3 or more hours on social media will come out with at least one suicide-related outcome compared to those that don't spend time on social media. Now, what have I done? I conducted a study of 10 high school students and asked them the following questions. Do you love your body? Do you compare yourself to models over media? And do those images make you feel less as a person? And do you look at the good or bad parts more often of your body? I then made an awareness video talking about body image and the disorders that go along with it. I provided a hotline and a website for those that need help, and it includes an interview with the student as I ask her take on the whole issue. Overall, on average, everyone loved their bodies. However, they did want to change themselves because of media. They constantly compare themselves to pictures online, and one student shared that everyone has insecurities. You just have to love yourself in order to teach others that they are beautiful as well. So if I have anything else to say, I want you all to be a person who loves themselves and doesn't believe anyone else. You take your opinions first. I want you all to be a person who looks at an Instagram model and doesn't immediately compare themselves, but rather takes as an image you would come across of. If I have to leave you today with anything, it would be as Pink says to her 5-year-old daughter who didn't think she fit the standards. We don't change. We take the gravel in the shell and we make a pearl. And we help others change so they see more kinds of beauty in life.
I chose to research poverty because it is a relevant issue in Monterey County, and I believe I can make a difference. I've seen how organizations such as the Monterey Food Bank positively impact the lives of those in need. When a person sees a photograph of a puppy or a kitten, they ask, "What can I do to help?" When they see or hear about a person living in poverty, they shrug their shoulders and look away. It is not right to turn our backs on the innocent children who are victims of their parents' poor choices. It is not up to us to judge, for we have not walked in their shoes or endured their life experiences. People immediately open up their hearts to animals. So what is stopping us from helping the people right here in Monterey? Our society will donate hundreds of dollars to animals to give them the best food and beds, yet a large majority is not willing to donate $10 to someone in need. This is one of the many questions that I have been pondering while trying to collect donations toward ending poverty today. We should care about poverty because it affects today's generations along with future generations to come. Without the proper food, water, healthcare, and education, people will regress in an intellectual level at a young age while their brains are still developing. In the beginning, Monterey Food Bank helped 500 people every month. Now, Monterey Food Bank helps 10,800 people every week. And it is even sadder to think that 50% of the people receiving food are children. During the summer, 6,720 students experienced hunger for 3 months in Monterey. Monterey lives in a 9.1% poverty rate, and these are just a few of the facts and statistics that I found along the way. And this is what should be done. School, society, local businesses need to donate through Improving Tomorrow Today or in person, post photographs, and spread the word. By either helping Monterey Food Bank or the Community Homeless Solutions, more families will be able to wake up with warm clothes to wear, books to read, and food on the table for the entire family. Welfare is providing financial aid to people in need. Some people debate about whether or not providing people money will make them dependent. This isn't relevant because helping someone who has hit a rough patch is the right thing to do. We are all human and we all share at least one thing in common, which is the ability to share the love. Helping someone out it's not going to just make them dependent, because they will have the money that they need to persevere, which will make them more motivated toward helping improve their family's quality of life. By either helping the Monterey Food Bank or the Community Homeless Solutions, you can be the reason a mother doesn't have to choose which child should be able to eat. You could be the reason that a child wants to learn and pursue, when they're older, a college degree. Sharing your wealth will help someone who has none to feel loved and supported. You can be the reason a family wakes up and has hope for a better tomorrow. Like in history, we are able to look at the past in order to help improve our future tomorrow. So I am encouraging you to go to your grocery store or look in your cupboard for canned food and make a donation to the Monterey Food Bank. You can also donate old or new books and clothing to the Community Homeless Solutions and leave your mark on the world. And this is what I have done. I have created pamphlets which I have shown to shops in downtown Carmel. After this, I decided to create an app called Improving Tomorrow Today, and I'm encouraging you to download and donate through this app and in person, post photographs, and make a difference. And then after this, you can be the reason, like I said before, that a family doesn't have to choose which child should be able to eat. You can help a family be able to learn, pursue, and have a college degree or go to trade school, which will open up several avenues in their life. In conclusion, by donating to the Monterey Food Bank or the Community Homeless Solutions, you can be the difference. All donations are welcome. An old coat that doesn't fit you right can help someone who is shivering in the cold and needs a coat. You can be their answered prayer. Your old pair of jeans that no longer fits you can help someone who has outgrown their old pair and has no other clothes to wear. Sharing your wealth will help someone, like I said before, who has none feel loved and supported, which is really important, because without love and support, they won't feel the encouragement, they won't have perseverance to keep moving forward. And by helping them, encouraging them, the two avenues that they will have, such as getting a college degree or going to trade school, wouldn't have been possible without you. You can be the reason that they rise above poverty, which will help future generations to come along with our future generation. That's what the app looks like when you can download it. And I'm encouraging you to take the first step. Donate, download, Improving Tomorrow Today, and make the world a better place by sharing your love to those who have none. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Nick Sloan, and today I'm going to be talking to you about simulated gambling. Now, I know just students in this room, I think we got one parent in the back and Miss Barnett. So for you students, just imagine that you're parents, okay? Now, I want you to imagine that your child, they get hooked on drugs or alcohol at such a young age. It's such a young and impressionable age. If you really knew what was going on, I don't think any of you would be okay with that. And just as an addiction to alcohol or an addiction to drugs can ruin someone's life, so can an addiction to gambling. Recently, the APA, also known as the American Psychiatric Association, they have recently classified gambling in the same vein as alcohol and drug addictions. Now, the bitter truth is many of your, imaginary kids, simply put, they've been gambling for some time now, but not in the way that you think. They are not betting money on roulette tables. They are not betting money on their hand in a game of poker, hoping for some jackpot prize. No. What they are gambling on are virtual items in virtual casinos. Today I'd like to show you what has become the modern norm in gaming these days: loot boxes. Now, we should care about the negative effects of loot boxes because it is simulated gambling and it's harming an entire generation of children. Now, back in the day, we had this thing called microtransactions, and how they would work is you'd pay a flat $5 and you get exactly what you paid for. And while those forms were annoying, at least they were honest. These days, you can spend over $80 and still not get what you want. Now, loot boxes in these forms, they have infected almost every AAA game out there. Now, AAA is for AAA, think blockbuster movies, but blockbuster games. The most top, best-selling games that everyone has to have, right? Your Call of Duties, your Star Wars, your Halos. And all these games I have up here, they all have loot boxes in them. Now, what people don't realize about these loot boxes is the sole purpose that they're in these loot containers and the loot is randomized is so that they can overcharge you. Instead of paying $5 for what you want, they are charging you they're charging you three $5 dice rolls. So instead of paying $5, you're getting $15 out of you. This is price gouging. Now, the odds are never in the consumer's favor. It's similar to casino, how the house always wins. They have the probabilities worked out that you will be paying absurd amount of monies to get what you want. Because all people are really paying for with these loot boxes are the glorified experience of opening a present. While you're sitting there with bated breath and anticipation as the loot box opens up. You're waiting there, anticipation in your eyes, you're just wondering, what could it be? What could it be? In that moment, anything is possible. And that's where they hook you. Because in that moment of uncertainty, you could get exactly what you want, or you get absolute garbage. Now, it's important to understand how your brain reacts to gambling. Now, like I said earlier, the APA has recently classified gambling as an addiction. And that's because recent studies have shown numerous links between compulsive gamblers, as well as drug addicts and steady alcoholics. Because the way your brain reacts to this it's very similar to how drug users go. The APA, or the Scientific American article by the APA put it rather nicely, in my opinion, is just as drug addicts, they require increasingly higher hits to get their high, compulsive gamblers require ever riskier ventures. Simply put, the more you do, the more you have to do, the harder it is to quit. Now, right here is an example of, on the left, they're called COD points, and they're a form of one of the systems in Call of Duty. And on the right are poker chips. Now, I'd like you to take a look at these and notice that the vague similarities between them. Or they aren't even vague, like they're blatant. They look like poker chips, okay? And these are fake currencies, right? They're the same reason they use fake currencies in games, they're the same reason they use fake currencies in casinos. Because what fake currencies do is they create a disassociating effect within the buyer. And the buyer sometimes isn't truly aware of how much money they're actually spending. Now, this next clip I'm about to show you is from a YouTube video, and I'd like to just point out that there are tons of these videos. I'm about to show you that too, but there's just a short clip from a YouTuber that shows him reacting after getting something from one of these loot boxes.
Or carry the, oh, we got it, the brand new Empire camo, let's friggin' do it. It shows the...
Okay, he is losing, all right, he's going crazy over a stupid gun camo, okay? And in these boxes, especially the Call of Duty ones in particular, and the reason I chose Call of Duty as kind of the main example is it's one of the more popular games, and I suspect reaching, the Call of Duty audience are the people that are most in need of this. Now, in these boxes, there are these things called like new weapons and stuff, and they're the main reason people buy them, because these new weapons, they're playable content. This is just a camo you put on your gun. This is just some customization feature, and he is losing his mind over this, okay? There are hundreds of these videos, each with thousands of views, and it's not like people our age or adults watching this, it's the kids, okay? Because when you watch a video, you watch a video to simulate an experience, all right? People watch porn to simulate sex. These little kids are watching these videos to simulate opening the boxes themselves when they run out of money. Because mom's getting a little suspicious that she's dropped $100 on this game and you still haven't gotten what you want. Despite the fact she's already paid $60 for the base game. That's $160 right there, and you still don't have what you want. Now, some of the main oppositions to this is, for a system like this, many people compare them to Pokemon cards and other trading systems. And while that's a understandable argument, and I understand why many people trot this out, it's hollow and devoid of any substance. Because for Pokemon cards to be as bad as some of these systems, there would have to be only a chance for you to get Pokemon cards in them. When you buy a Pokemon card pack, you get Pokemon cards. But if they were to be as bad as some of these other systems, in those packs you'd have just a chance of getting a Pokemon card, and the rest just being some dumb Pokemon stickers or fake tattoos. Another argument is that many games that involve these loot boxes systems are rated M for mature, which is a 17 or older argument. So by that logic, no one too young to gamble should be on these games. But this is a false narrative, okay? Because in our home state of California, the legal gambling age is 21 and above. And even if the legal gambling age everywhere was 18, by that logic, 17-year-olds still have access to that. And just because it's rated M doesn't mean kids can't play it. It just means they can't buy it. I know plenty of kids that are playing these M-rated games. I'm sure you know plenty of them too. I was one of them when I was that age. I just had to get my parents' permission. Now, what needs to happen is we need to raise awareness of this issue. We don't need court legislative to destroy it. We can do it ourselves. Just don't stop talking about it. What I've done in my community is I've tried to raise awareness in my groups of friends and the people I play with. I've corresponded with local government officials describing the potential illegalities and immoral systems and the potential health hazards that they invoke. Now, in conclusion, these systems, they're de facto gambling, okay? No matter how you look at it, they are gambling. We can't expect these companies to screw with our kids and be surprised when our kids turn out screwed up. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Mackenzie, and growing up close to the ocean, I have always had this fascination about the marine life that lives within it. More specifically, whales. I have always loved whales and their beauty, but especially their singing. It astounded me how these big, strong creatures could construct such mellow symphonies. Yet as I pursue my love for these gentle giants, the more I learn about how their songs are starting to fade and be muffled by the ever-growing noise that we humans create. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. If I told you that more than 52,000 ships sailed the oceans last year alone, it wouldn't be surprising, as shipping is the easiest mode of transportation of goods. We can all see the effects that this would have on the environment. However, it's the unseen effects that deserve its own awareness, a different kind of pollution that you may not be familiar with, but is still affecting the whale population nonetheless. Noise pollution. We should care about noise pollution because marine mammals depend on their hearing like we depend on our sight and are being threatened by it every day. In 1956, Jacques-Yves Cousteau released a documentary in which he described the ocean as a silent world. However, this is completely untrue, as sound moves further and faster underwater due to water molecules being denser and more closely packed. This makes water a great conductor of sound, so good in which sounds generated in one location can be heard thousands of miles away. Marine mammals rely on sound as their medium of communication and can use sound to communicate with each other from distances like 100 miles away. However, in the past 60 years, underwater sound has increased in magnitude as levels of industrialization has increased in the North Atlantic and Southern Hemisphere. There are two types of anthropogenic noise. One is chronic, that comes from constant ship traffic. This noise is low frequency and has been doubling every decade. The other is on again, off again, which stems from noises like seismic surveying, and the use of military sonar testing. These sounds create an intense amount of acoustic sound energy that can be heard across the sea. Several negative responses that has been seen in at least 27 species are serious injury or death due to hemorrhaging in the brain or lungs, temporary or permanent loss of hearing, and yes, they are bleeding out of their eyes. Avoidance behavior, which is when whales purposely stray from their migratory paths or disrupt mating and feeding, and aggressive behavior. The modern container ship can put up to 190 decibels of sound into the ocean, which, if you don't know, is as loud as standing in the middle of an explosion. And only 5 more than that, at 195 decibels of sound, the human ear ruptures. So imagine what that does to whales. With all these noise factors in our oceans, whales easily get confused and can lose their sense of direction, which leave many to strand themselves on oceans and die. This is exactly what happened in 2000 when a single U.S. Navy ship using mid-frequency sonar caused the mass stranding of beaked whales that resulted in 17 deaths. And in Madagascar in 2008, there was a mass stranding of 100 melonhead whales that caused an investigation by the International Whaling Committee that concluded seismic surveying to be the cause. The only way to combat such a big problem is getting Congress to implement strict laws and regulations that shipping, oil, and gas companies have to follow. However, people at home can still do little things that can help reduce noise pollution. For instance, boat owners should keep their boats in clean and in working order, as a regularly clean propeller and well-tuned engines have a great effect on the amount of sound released. And people planning to go jet skiing or boating should choose their recreational areas carefully and be sure to avoid sensitive marine areas. However, the most important thing someone could do is voice their opinions and concerns to national and local government leaders, like our district assembly member Mark Stone and Congressman Jimmy Panetta. In 2016, there was a new plan introduced called the Ocean Noise Strategy Roadmap that would manage the noise humans put into the sea. It was outlined by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it's a 10-year strategy. But the only question is getting it implemented. Because even though this plan exists, Congress and Trump aren't doing anything to help solve noise pollution. In April of 2017, Trump began taking steps to undo the ban of drilling that Obama had set during his presidency. Trump made executive plans to open the Atlantic to offshore drilling. And now the National Marine Fisheries Service is set to permit 5 companies that can begin seismic surveying in the Atlantic. During the 45-day public comment period, officials said that it would help stimulate and grow the economy. However, there are other ways to stimulate the economy without going straight to something that will harm our oceans. One way to solve it is from within by buying locally. Not only does this keep money circulating within the local economy, but it can also help reduce noise pollution as it reduces the amount of goods that need to be shipped overseas. So what did I do to help noise pollution? I sent an email to Mark Stone and asked him what is currently being done and what he can do to help execute plans to help stop noise pollution. I also sent the same email to Congressman Jimmy Panetta with some modification, but however, I'm still waiting for a response. Noise pollution is a serious issue. It's greatly affecting the whale population and marine life. We are the only ones responsible and the only ones who can stop it. So remember, the most important thing you can do is buy locally and voice your opinions and concerns, because a deaf whale is a dead whale.
Hi, Marcel, and today I'm presenting DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. DACA is an important topic to me, as many of those that are being affected share my same race and homeland. DACA has had a major impact on the United States, both on society and economically, and I feel that its removal at this point would not ruin our economy, but it would certainly hurt it, as well as cause a lot more racism and xenophobia within our culture. Today we're going to discuss DACA from both sides of the political spectrum, both Republican and Democratic, and we're also going to discuss why DACA and its removal will affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of innocent people. Here's why you should care. You should care about DACA because its permanent removal will have a major impact on our U.S. economy and society. DACA was implemented on July 12th, 2012, by the Obama administration. It was created by the DHS, or Department of Homeland Security. But at this point, there was some opposition, but not enough to have it completely removed. That wasn't until 2014 when DACA got a lot of flack for attempting to expand its parameters, as well as implement a new program called DAPA, Deferred Action for Parents of Americans, which had illegal immigrants who had American children have the same rights as DACA recipients. This unfortunately was not implemented, and so this was a breaking point for many Republicans. Republicans led by Texas fought against DACA for a few years, so when the Trump administration took over, we all knew it was going to be the end of it. And so at this point, DACA is not technically removed, but it doesn't technically exist anymore. Some of the top countries of origins for DACA recipients are from Latin America, which includes Mexico, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. 84% come from Mexico, 12% come from South America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and the remaining 4% come from the Eastern Hemisphere, from places like Syria, South Korea, South Africa, and India. Most of their ages range from 16 to 35 years old, and the majority, as you can see, they're 21 to 25 years old, which incidentally happens to be the age of most college students. So we're basically kicking future workers for us out of the United States. 123,000 of DACA recipients owned homes, and with homes comes property taxes. Overall, in a year, DACA recipients paid about $380 million in property taxes. For comparison, The average DACA recipient paid about $3,000 a year. Meanwhile, the average American household paid about $2,000 a year. That's a $1,000 difference, so economically removing it doesn't make any sense. There's tons of opposition and refutation for DACA, and we're going to go over them today. For number one, we have DACA is unconstitutional. This idea comes from a quote from Obama. In 2011, he quoted, "I cannot bypass Congress. That's not democracy." And so a year later, he implemented DACA, bypassing Congress. Many Republicans thought this was unfair and unconstitutional. However, as of today, it's still being argued whether or not it is, and the Supreme Court still hasn't decided. So as of right now, we can assume it's still constitutional. Oh. For a second one, DACA is a drain on the economy. This idea comes from the idea that the United States is spending more money on DACA than we're getting back. It's actually not true. Well, with how I mentioned property taxes, taxes taken away from paychecks, as well as cost of application and reapplication. Every application costs about $450, and reapplication is $450 each. And so for my final opposition, DACA is, they're just living off our government. This idea is just myths through media that recipients, they live off of welfare and don't have to hardly work for the United States at all. It's actually not true either, because it's just a myth. With the thing about welfare, to apply for welfare, you must be working. And even then, for DACA recipients, they most likely can't even apply for it. In most states, they can't apply for financial aid for college, nor scholarships. So all those success stories you've heard, that all comes from their own pocket. Here's what should be done. We should be fighting for DACA and standing up for the rights, for the privileges that were taken away from the recipients so unfairly. Now for some solutions. Some of the simplest solutions can be done by you, the citizen. Simply writing an email, calling, or texting a message to your senator or representative asking them to push forward one of these acts I'm about to present to you. That does everything, really. Some of these acts are the Bridge Act, which is like DACA, and it will not provide a way for citizenship, but it does offer protected presence as well as withholding information from ICE and the United States Border and Customs Patrol. Next one we have is Succeed Act. The Succeed Act is mostly supported by Republicans. It is alike in DACA, except in the fact that it would allow a 15-year pathway to citizenship, protected presence, as well as work authorization, as well as the ability to travel outside the U.S. Next, we have the DREAM Act of 2017. This act is the most well-known, has bipartisan support, and has 211 sponsors. However, it still hasn't been implemented. It's been pushed since 2001, and in 2017, it was meant to be implemented, but it never was. This offers a 5-year pathway to citizenship, protected presence, work authorization, and that's about it. Next, we have the RAC Act, which offers 5-year conditional residency, which isn't permanent residency, but protected presence, essentially. It's the most flexible one, and the one that I think most people should know about. What I've done is I've made a YouTube channel, and I plan on making a video series explaining what DACA is, misconceptions, as well as offering my insight on the issue. In conclusion, DACA has had a long run, and hopefully we'll see it revived again, but I believe the Trump administration has made a lot of awful decisions surrounding it. But there is some good news. April 24th, a judge told Donald Trump that he has 90 days till about mid-July to come up with a legitimate reason as to why we should remove DACA. If him and his team can't come up with one by then DACA will be forced to be reimplemented. I see it as a good thing, and unfortunately, thousands of people's lives have already been ruined. So hopefully we can come up with a solution to fix their lives, and hopefully we'll never have to go through anything like this again.
Okay, hello class. Today I'm going to be talking about veteran homelessness. Now, to begin, veterans have fought for our country overseas, and it's not right for us to turn our back on them once they come home, because they have a lot of struggles once they come home after the traumas of war. Now, on average, every day in America, there's about 40,000 homeless veterans on any given day. Now, to put that into perspective, that's just about how many people can fit into the AT&T Park in San Francisco, just as a way to compare. I find it very disappointing that many veterans have a hard time adapting to civilian life, since in terms of jobs, they can do amazing things in business and economic careers. Their understanding of teamwork, synergy, and leadership can lead them to do amazing, absolutely amazing things. I personally have a strong passion for this because I have a great interest in military service. As well, many members of my family have served in the armed forces, so I feel very passionate about this topic. Now, once again, we should care about veteran homelessness because veterans fought to preserve our freedoms and our way of life, and we should not turn our back on them in their time of need, and we need to support them like they protected us. Now, a little bit of history. There's many reasons why veterans have a hard time adapting to the civilian world when they come back home. One of which is difficulty in finding affordable housing, affordable health care, or just finding a job in general. Another thing is PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a big part of the struggle. The traumatic experiences that they face overseas follows them. It continues to follow them in the United States, and that makes it very difficult for them to have relationships and go on with the rest of their lives. Substance abuse plays a part in that as well, because many veterans hope that the use of drugs can help mask the traumatic memories, but often it just makes it even worse. Now, another thing is the skills that a veteran learns in the military are indeed impressive. However, they're not very applicable to civilian workforces, which kind of makes them struggle because, I mean, they're indeed impressive skills, but when are you going to have to crawl under barbed wire in like a business scenario? Maybe it happens, but I don't think very commonly. Now, the thousands of veterans who have served in the armed forces, have served in American conflicts that spanned from Vietnam to Afghanistan, Iraq, the Korean War, World War II, all over the world in American conflicts they've served. And approximately 1.4 million other veterans are at risk of homelessness due to poverty and other situations that are out of their control that cause them to struggle greatly. And returning to the issue of PTSD, many of them have mental illnesses. Like I've said before, post-traumatic stress disorder makes it very difficult for them to move on after serving overseas. And approximately 50% of all veterans who are in need of mental treatment because of their mental illness, only 50% of them will receive any treatment, which is very disappointing and not a very great statistic. Now, the Vietnam War is one of the bloodiest, it's a very bloody conflict in our American history. And approximately, it's very amazing that it's this bad of a statistic, but approximately 1/2 of veterans who served in the Vietnam War are currently homeless. Alive today are currently homeless in the United States. So that's a lot of people. Now, I believe there's one surefire way to help stop veteran homelessness. I believe the VA, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, needs to receive more federal funding so that they can give more programs to veterans who are struggling. They could provide them with programs and support programs so that they could adapt to the civilian world a lot easier than what has been happening. We also need to get business owners to want to hire veterans because they really are successful and can do great things in business and economic careers. Now, there has been some headway in lowering veteran homelessness. The VA has done great things, and annually they provide veterans with 150,000 veterans receive health care from the VA every year, and within the past 30 years, the VA has provided 30,000 permanent beds for veterans to get off the street, which helps a lot. And with that, within the past 5 years, veteran homelessness has gone down 40%. So I think that's a very great statistic, gone down 40%. Now, along with that, I also believe that the VA specifically, with the federal funding, needs to receive a little bit more. They need to focus a little bit more on helping veterans who are newly released from the military adapt immediately into the civilian world, and they just need to give them more support with financials, job search. They just need more support that they can transition better into the civilian world. Now, I understand that some people may say that spending millions, even billions of dollars on this can maybe drop us in even more debt, and we shouldn't be spending our money on that. And I agree that's a good argument, but I don't really think it's relative or valid, because at this point, if you can see here, we're at $21 trillion in US debt. And with that amount of money, I don't think a couple $1 million will even kind of make a difference. So we need to reallocate this money and put it into the veterans who matter. Now, what I did to make a difference is I learned about the VTC, Veteran Transitional Center in Marina from Monterey County through the community service fair that we had a couple months ago. And I thought that for this project, it would be perfect for me to go to the Dollar Tree, get 70 items, toothpaste, toothbrushes, soap, all of that, and donate it to the VTC, which is exactly what I did. And I thought it was very rewarding, and I was very proud to do it. In the end, honestly, the way that we treat veterans says a lot about who we are as a society. Like I've said before, veterans have fought for our freedoms overseas, and we should not turn our back on them in their time of need. I often feel sorry about this. I often feel very sad about this, because I can't say I haven't done it before, but just walking past the veterans on the side of the street, I feel like we do that very commonly, as if they're stray dogs. And once again, I can't say I haven't done that before, but I think we need to change our mentality and help them, maybe just give them 50 cents to make their day. Honestly, in the end, if we don't care about the men and women who fought for our freedoms, then what is it that we truly care about in this world?
In 2017, Columbia University went through a suicide wave. They lost 7 students, but one student recalls when she considered ending her life. She knew that she needed help, and she went looking for it. She called the counseling center at her school and told them that she was considering suicide. They said that the next available appointment was in 2 weeks. She told them that her symptoms were very serious and urgent, but she was told to surround herself with friends until she could get an appointment. Mental health influences everything in our lives, and I realized how accessibility to mental health resources might affect me or someone I know in the future at a job or in school, and how not only the presence but the quality of these resources might affect or can be very impactful on the quality of a person's life. In ancient cultures and the Middle Ages, people with mental illnesses were thought to be possessed or have problems with their religion. Over time, stigma formed against mental illnesses. In the 1840s, Dorothea Dix pushed for better conditions in mental hospitals. State mental hospitals were underfunded, understaffed, and criticized for their poor living conditions and violations of human rights. In the 1950s, a push for deinstitutionalization and outpatient treatment arose along with the development of antipsychotic drugs. This movement sought to reform asylum-based care and to increase and move toward community-oriented care. Throughout the 1960s, many severely mentally ill were moved to local mental health homes. Years earlier, in 1946, Harry Truman passed the National Mental Health Act, which created the National Institute of Mental Health and provided government funds for research of mental illnesses. Studies show that today, 1 in 5 Americans experiences a mental health issue every year. We should care about accessibility to mental health resources because everyone has the right to live a full and happy life and to overcome their struggles. The loss of the 7 Columbia students last year was due to a lack of sufficient resources. Columbia's walk-in hours vary by dorm. Some halls only have a few hours per week to speak with a psychologist. In fact, only half of the 139 colleges surveyed in a 2016 study have counseling centers accredited by the International Association of Counseling Centers. Stigma also play a large part in accessibility to mental health resources, and studies have shown prevalent themes in stigma including fear and exclusion, authoritarianism, and benevolence. Mentally ill people often take the stigma that society pins on them and they begin to believe it, give into it, and use it against themselves. High costs of psychiatric care, including therapy and medicine, also poses barriers to those seeking help for mental health. We need to take action to eliminate stigma against mental illnesses and to make resources such as pharmaceuticals and psychotherapy more accessible to everyone. Let's start by eliminating stigma. Educating people about mental illnesses and what people have to live with is the first step in eliminating stigma. And this should take place in schools, workplaces, and communities. America and other countries should take initiative by investing in public-based education programs and awareness strategies, campaigns, and engagement activities. Implementing these strategies would take a step toward eliminating stigma against mental illnesses. And we should also hold awareness events such as walkathons and other charity events. People might argue against increasing accessibility to mental health resources, saying that the government, universities, and workplaces don't have the money to increase or even provide funding for mental health resources. The government already spends hundreds of billions of dollars on healthcare services, but of these billions of dollars spent on health and human services, less than 0.5% of this money goes toward mental health and substance abuse services. And of this 0.5%, nearly 24% of the grants given and money spent in this area goes toward one organization that doesn't solely focus on mental health. People might also use Yale as an example because 63% of Yale University's spending already goes toward the staff. But considering this high percentage of money already being spent on the staff and increasing tuition rates, universities should be able to increase accessibility to mental health resources, starting with hiring new employees who are trained to provide these services. I took initiative to address this problem by looking into local colleges and writing a letter to Congressman Jimmy Panetta. In my letter, I discussed the resources provided at CSUMB. I stated that a crisis center should be added because crises are not scheduled and won't always fit in the time frame of walk-in hours. I also said that the counseling center should expand its hours to increase accessibility. I called for these new resources to be carried over to other local campuses such as MPC and Hartnell. I also questioned what was being done to make sure that the staff have resources that they can use, and stated that the mental health of the educators is just as important as the mental health of the students. I brought attention to the fact that although universities are providing mental health resources, what is given is not enough to create a fully supportive environment for the entire campus. We need to fight to increase accessibility to mental health resources by eliminating stigma, expanding the workforce that provides these resources, and decreasing cost of treatment to eliminate wealth barriers. A battle against mental illness can be a confusing and frustrating one, but no one deserves to navigate their illness alone. Everyone deserves to have access to resources that can help them cope with
Based
their
on
issues.
the Lakota tribe, one of many tribes who was removed from their original homeland many years ago. The United States is in fact one of the most powerful countries in the world, yet there's still deep poverty within the deepest corners. And all the poverty is mainly specifically located in the Midwest, and that's where most of the reservations are. This is one of them, Pine Ridge. Now, there's a term that the Indians refer to as Washitu. Washitu means non-Indian, or you could also refer to as the one who takes the best part of the meat for himself. And the following is a timeline. My thesis is we should care about hidden poverty in Indian reservations in the United States because people are dying from starvation and disease. And the following is a timeline of those who lost so that we could gain. Treaties made, treaties broken, massacres disguised as battles. And if you take a look around here, we're here at Carmel High School, probably one of the top schools in the state, perhaps even in the nation. And yes, indeed, we have taken the best part of the meat. 1851, the first Fort Limited Treaty was made. It set the boundaries of the Lakota Nation. 1863, the Homestead Act. It was signed by President Lincoln. 1866, the Transcontinental Railroad. It was a new era. That's when they started building the Transcontinental Railroad. Would later cause conflicts with the Indian reservations the Indian tribes because it would go westward, and that's where all the territory is of the Indians. 1868, the Lakota War starts. The United States wanted to take over the territory of the Lakota and other Indian tribes, and what happened was that they battled each other, and the Lakota got together with other tribe called Red Cloud, and they defeated the U.S. Army. I want to repeat that part. They defeated the U.S. Army. 1871, the Wounded Knee Massacre. It was a massacre in where the United States, they forced the Indians out of there by killing their main resource, which was the bison, the buffalo. They used that resource as food, shelter, and yeah, they killed off like most of the animal, and it's a beautiful animal, and nowadays it's an endangered species. 1875, the Wounded Knee Massacre. They forced them out, and then they chased them down, and the people were literally hiding like under holes to like defend themselves from the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army just didn't care, and they just killed women and children, and so, yeah, it was really bad. People's dream died there, and it was a really beautiful dream. 1890, the longest court case in history of the Indians and the United States. It was a court case to decide what to do with the territory of the Indian tribes that they took away, and it took a while to decide what to do with that territory. The United States decided to make the territory into prison camps. They would send all the Indian rebels into that prison camps. Nowadays, these prison camps, they're reservations. And nowadays, there's these reservations, the Indians, they're suffering in poverty. They're suffering from disease, alcoholism, drugs, domestic violence, etc. And they live in really poor communities, and it's really bad. Here are some statistics and evidence about them. The percentile population with at least a high school education. As you can see here, all the reservations here, most of the kids don't even reach high school level. And if they do, most of them drop out. The next one. Here's a picture of a lady with a sign that says Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse was a leader of the tribe. He was massacred by the U.S. Army many years ago. Over here it says meth dealer. They were really dealing with drug problems and all that. Another chart. House characteristics on reservations. The houses over there are really bad. Most don't even live in houses, and the ones that do, without electricity, 14%. Homes without indoor plumbing, 20%. Homes without adequate sewage disposal, 18%. Homes without complete kitchen facilities, 18%. Homes without telephone service, 53.40%. My thesis B, Indian reservations are the most povertized locations in the U.S. New laws and more programs should be the goal and solution to this factor. There's one of the houses. It's really bad. My solution to this problem, the government has to step it up because they have programs running already, but it's not enough to get the Indians out of the poverty. It's really bad. Also, one more thing, the Indians have to step it up as well. Yes, they're the ones in poverty, but they have to have strong mindsets to rebuild their community all over again. And of course, we could help them. They suffer a lot from diabetes. The diabetes rate is the highest in that location. The average lifespan of men on these communities is 42 years old. For women, it's 53 years old. As for the average American citizen, they live up to 78 years old. My a dream. Now, what did I do to help these people? Well, at first, I gathered food and clothing, and I'm a person who wanted to go over there and give it to them. But unfortunately, I just can't leave just like that. So then I decided to mail it to them. And I spent a long time trying to find something like an address to sell it to send the stuff to. But it was really hard because they're really poor communities, and it's really hard to get in touch with them. So then I told myself, well, it's better to do something than to do nothing. So I simply made an Instagram account, which my goal is to gain followers and at least spread the word. If you guys are interested, right there, in your reservation stove, spread the word, guys. In conclusion, the government has programs running already, but these programs aren't enough to get these people out of the poverty that they're in. Now, these communities are in such deep poverty. They suffer from disease, domestic violence, drug addictions, and diseases. And if the government can change and we can change, then we can all change, because a voice can make a difference.
My presentation is on the problem with mass incarceration. America, land of the free, has more people locked up than any other nation in the world. The way America responds to crime turns minor criminals into longtime offenders of the law. The United States is famous for its ways of responding to crime, placing the label on people as hardcore criminals as soon as they are convicted. Today, over 2.4 million people are incarcerated. Prison overpopulation is unrivaled by any other country. We should care about how mass incarceration affects everyone who lives in America. Prison hasn't always been the most common form of punishment. Social, involuntary labor, and physical punishment were used in the past. Prison was the idea that to restrict a person's rights, it would be justice for the crime that they had committed. The history of prisons follow with hundreds of years of inhumanity and injustice to prisoners. Since the 1980s, prisons have been located in areas that are isolated from society and many dirty conditions. Not to mention the racial injustice that America faces. African Americans, the crime rate in America, even though the crime rate in America is lower than the global average, it's 6 to 10 times higher to be incarcerated. It costs $80 billion to keep 2.4 million prisoners in prison. $80 billion could pay tuition for 15.6 million students to go to a public university. Though 626,000 people leave prison every year, millions of people still enter. This shows the imbalance of how many people leave prison and how many people enter prison. There's way more people entering prison than leaving prison every year. Not to mention the racial disparities that African Americans face in prison. Even though only 13% of our population is African Americans, they make up half of the population in prison. 1 in 9 black children have a parent in prison today. Some people believe that if incarceration rates decreased, crime rates would increase, and that because crime rates are so high today, that we can't decrease incarceration rates. But this is not true, because over the past 25 years, crime rates have decreased, and incarceration rates have quadrupled, actually. So though crime rates are decreasing, our prison rates are increasing. The African Americans are incarcerated 6 times higher than the percentage of Caucasians. We need to reduce incarceration and crime rates by having alternatives to the prison punishment. Alternatives that are cost-effective and better for society in the long run, such as community service and treatment for prisoners and even probation. All these things are going to be cheaper and more effective in the long run because it won't hurt our society and it'll better our communities. By keeping prisoners out of prison and helping them find job relocation and job placements, it will keep incarceration rates lower. What have I done to make a difference? I created a website where you can go on and look at people's stories about how prison has affected their families and their communities and even themselves. You can read statistics and facts about how prison affects people. To finish up, I just think that prison incarceration rates are just too high, and they're the highest they've ever been, actually. And we just need to think of reforms for society.
My name is
that
Ariel
are-
Elazar, as you guys know, and I did my topic on underpaid and underappreciated teachers. Teachers have a unique job. They shape the minds of the students that will one day hold the big ideas to change our country. In a sense, they build our future. It is in their hands, all in the classroom. Since my earliest memories, I have known that I wanted to be a teacher. I enjoy being the one that people turn to when they have a question in school. A few years ago, I shared my passion for teaching with my parents, and the first thing they told me is that I'd be paid much less than what I deserved and treated poorly. I quickly began to doubt my passion that I was so confident in for years prior. This is where I started to question, why are teachers so underpaid and underappreciated? So, some history. Students entering university as an education major has been falling short in recent years. Along with this, the baby boomer generation, which includes everyone born between the years of 1940 to 1960s, occupies the highest percentage of the teacher workforce. Researchers believe that once the youngest of this generation retires, the teacher's workforce will see a major deflation. Along with this, teachers are more likely to work in districts that are for higher wage neighborhoods due to the apparent wage gap. The difference between two cities that are less than 20 miles apart can be $15,000. We should care about teachers being underpaid and underappreciated because they are accountable for being educators of our future generations. So take CUSD and MPUSD, for example. Carmel Unified, the beginning salary at Carmel Unified for a teacher with a bachelor's and less than 30 credits is about $60,000 annually, while at MPUSD, a teacher with the same level of education and level of experience makes a shocking $45,000. $15,000 can be make or break for someone who has families and financial dependencies. Some opposition and refutation. So someone that opposes my claim would say that possibly teachers have an easy schedule, such as summers off, weekends off, and they only work 189 days out of the year. My refutation to that would be that teachers, when interviewed, work an additional 15 to 20 hours on top of the 40 hours weekly. If you do the math of the 36 weeks in the school year, teachers are still working more hours than the average 9-to-5 annual worker. Another opposition would be that teachers are already appreciated through Teachers Appreciation Day. And I would say that because Teachers Appreciation Day is only yearly and not weekly or monthly, it is so hard to keep that level of appreciation for teachers year-round and realize all that they do every day. In order to solve this issue, we must find ways to increase teacher salaries and create more Teacher Appreciation Days. I interviewed Mr. Stafford, who previously worked in other schools and has gone to school for 11 years for his history major. He said that when I asked him how he felt about going to school longer than the average doctor, he said, "I don't hold a grudge against doctors, but sometimes the teacher's end is so low." He said that Carmel stays consistent and fair with inflation, but this is not the case for many other districts in our county. Some solutions to this issue would be that annually the U.S. government receives $3.8 trillion in taxes. These taxes are later broken down into 4 main categories, such as discretionary, mandatory, trust, and federal taxes. So under the discretionary category, the military and education system are in the same subcategory. The military receives $600 billion of the taxes, which is 53% of all the discretionary taxes. This is more than all other 20 subcategories. If we gave $5 billion from the military money to the U.S. government, every teacher would receive a $2,500 boost to their salary and be given more money for supplies and other resources. Making a difference. So over spring break, I wrote every teacher at Carmel High School a little thank you card. I try to make it as personal and thoughtful as possible because every teacher loves to know how much they've impacted a student's life. Although I have not been in the class of every teacher, I know that they appreciated it and it changed their day even in the slightest. One of the teachers who had the biggest response was Coach Jay. He said that in all his years of teaching, he has never received a thank you card from one of his students. He placed the card on the same shelves as pictures of his wife and kids and things that he cares about deeply. It felt so great to give someone at CHS a little love and a little appreciation. In conclusion, teachers are the main reason why our future generations stay educated and maintain a confident position in society. Two main ideas need to be implemented. The first being that the tax breakdown needs to be reassigned, and the second being that we need to create more Teachers Appreciation Days, thus creating more teachers in the teacher workforce.
Hi, I'm Juliana, and my topic is ending racism in college admissions. When my sister was a senior in high school, she was constantly worrying about what to get on the ACT and how to get into Ivy League colleges. For hours, she would research how to pass and how to get into these colleges. And eventually she ran into this eye-opening article. Michael Wang applied to 7 Ivy League colleges in Stanford when he was a senior. He was the perfect student. He got a 36 on the ACT, took 13 AP classes, was second in his class, was a finalist in national piano contests, debate contests, and math competitions. He even sang in the choir at Obama's inauguration. However, he only got into University of Pennsylvania out of the 7 Ivy League colleges in Stanford that he applied to. Students that are way less qualified have gotten into these colleges. Affirmative action unintentionally works to discriminate against Caucasian and Asian students in order to bring diversity to the college campus. We should care about racism in college admissions because it is not allowing equal opportunities to the brightest and hardest working students due to their Caucasian or Asian race. Some history on this subject is, in 1961, JFK signed the Executive Order 10925. This established affirmative action. Affirmative action was a program designed to give African American and Hispanics a better chance when applying to jobs and to college. In 1996, Proposition 209 was put in place. This abolished the use of affirmative action in public colleges in California. In 2008, Abigail Fisher applied to the University of Texas and was rejected. Her less qualified minority peers were accepted. Therefore, she sued the college. In 2016, it made it to the Supreme Court, and they ruled in favor of the university, allowing the use of affirmative action in college admissions. In 2016, 64 Asian individuals and groups filed a complaint against Harvard University in hopes to end the use of affirmative action in their admissions process. Some evidence on the subject. Affirmative action was a program designed to bring equality to the campus of colleges, but it has done the opposite. Students that are African American and Hispanic have a 30 to 40% chance better into getting into colleges compared to their Asian and Caucasian peers. Rachel Rubin, a Harvard student, did a survey of 63 most high-achieving colleges in America, and 42 said that race was the most important variable on college applications. Asian American students should no longer have to score 450 points higher on the SAT in order to get into the same colleges their Hispanic and African American peers get into. Some people believe that since President Lyndon Johnson signed this bill to make up for past injustices, that should be a reason it's still used today. When he was president, slavery was a horrendous reality that was very real. Today, slavery is very real, and the past is something that we should always remember. But other races have suffered many injustices too. The Georgetown University gave president to the African Americans they help sell as a school, which is a very kind act, but if they're going to make up for those injustices they did against African American slaves, then they should make up for the injustices they did against Asians. America has a very brutal history with the Asian culture. Asians have faced things such as the Asian Exclusion Act, being forced into World War II internment camps. Asians are not looked at when trying to make up for past injustices, and they need to. One injustice is not more important than another. 10 racism in college admissions. States should ban affirmative action. So there are many solutions to this issue, and some of them have happened already. When Proposition 209 passed, the Asian population in California universities skyrocketed. Nowadays, the Asian population in some colleges are up to 50%. This is one great solution. Another solution is when the 64 individuals protested against the use of affirmative action in Harvard schools. Following this, Donald Trump launched an investigation into this, and now there's going to be a trial, and there's hope for changes. As individuals, there's not much we can do on our own besides talking to the government, but we can band together to refuse to answer questions such as race, and we can bring awareness to this issue. What I have done is I've worked with my fellow students and peers to make my voice stronger. As a high school student, there's not much I can do except bringing awareness to this issue and going to my local government to hope for change. So a couple weeks ago, I created a petition to remove the race section from college applications. Within the first 24 hours, I received 26 signatures, and by the end of the month, I hope for 100 more. If this does not change Jimmy Panetta's views on racism in college admissions, I at least hope it brings light to this issue. We can all sign this petition and bring change to our local community, and for when we apply to college, we can have equal opportunity. In conclusion, we should care about racism in college admissions because it affects Caucasian and Asian students. Students should not be judged based off their skin color. They should be judged off their merit and their achievements. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Salvador Perez, and today I'm going to tell you about why obesity matters in the United States. Obesity is an elephant in the room. It is a problem that not too many people want to or are too afraid to talk about. Did you know that 32% of men and 35% of women are considered obese in the United States? As you can see, this is a huge problem both physically and literally speaking. This is why I'm here today to talk to you about this problem, as I believe it is important that everyone should have the chance at a healthier life. And I believe if we do not stop this problem now, then later on in the future it will become uncontrollable and more people will be at risk to chronic diseases. The history behind the problem. Now, long ago, our ancestors needed food to survive, as food was scarce at the time. Now in our nation, food is in abundance. The obesity problem started to become a problem in the 1980s due to the increase of processed foods, as well as fast food corporations. At that time, 15% of the U.S. was considered obese, and now, 40 years later, it has more than doubled to 36% of people. Currently, 80% of Americans are not meeting the daily recommended physical activity by the government, which is around 1 hour, and to top that off, 45% of Americans are not receiving health benefits from work due to being obese. It is also one of the greatest factors in chronic diseases as well as healthcare costs, as per year it can rise up to $200 billion. As you can see, this is a huge problem that affects so many people. I believe we should care about the problem of obesity as it negatively affects the health of everyone. Now, as I said before, obesity is one of the greatest factors for chronic diseases, and one of these include type 2 diabetes, which is the inability to control one's blood sugar. This can cause stroke, blindness, and heart disease. As well as diabetes, it is also linked to some forms of cancer, such as uterine and colon cancer for women and prostate cancer for men. Due to excess weight on the body, it can lead to joint pain, causing osteoarthritis, as well as sleep apnea, which can lead to short periods of no breathing, sleep deprivation, and heavy snoring. And due to lack of oxygen not going into the body, it can also eventually lead to heart failure. As well as physical problems, it also affects people mentally, as mental problems such as PTSD, depression, and anxiety are linked to obesity, as well as eating disorders such as anorexia and bulimia. Now, more talk is going around about how genetics are the problem and not the people. According to Dr. Louise Bauer, she states that 70% of the way you are made is based on your genetic makeup, and thus people with obesity-linked genes are not able to control them. This was tested on rats, as they saw that those with this gene gained more significant weight than those who didn't. Now, they also said that rats are a great way to learn about the human body, and if this is true, is it possible for humans with obesity-linked genes to control them? And the answer is yes. Recent studies have shown that you are able to decrease an obesity-linked gene by over 40% just by exercise. One study was tested among a group of Amish individuals who had an obesity-linked gene known as FTO. they saw that the daily amount of physical activity they did allowed them to maintain a healthy weight. Obesity researcher Dr. Timothy Church also states that just by creating a healthier diet and a exercise routine, you're able to lose weight as well as maintain it after. Now, what needs to happen? I believe in order to solve the problem of obesity, we need to encourage ourselves as well as everyone else to create and maintain healthier lifestyles. Now, how do we go on about this? It all starts with diet. It is important that you eat healthier foods in order to increase your physical activity. One way to do this is by keeping your fridge stocked with fruits and vegetables and eating at least 5 servings of either of them a day. Also, encourage yourself as well as others to drink water more often than sugary beverages such as soda and sports drinks. Cooking is also a great way to prevent yourself from going to fast food joints, as you're able to create healthy food the way you want it to. Once you are done creating a healthier diet, it is now time to start working on exercise routines. The government recommends, as I said before, 1 hour of daily physical activity, and you're able to achieve this by things such as biking, yoga, running, just working out in general, and other physical activities. It is important that you encourage yourself as well as your friends and family to engage in these activities, as the greater reach you have, the greater chance you have at stopping this problem. Even little things such as taking the stairs instead of an elevator, biking or walking to a nearby destination rather than using a car, to even gardening can promote healthier habits in the long run. How I made a difference. I believe that in order to stop this problem of obesity, we should all take on personal goals to maintain a healthier life. I've done this personally by just exercising more, walking home from school every day now, and eating healthier. I have also created a website for all of Carmel Unified to see in order to understand why the obesity problem matters and ways to stop it. I've also created certain links that you can look at if you are more interested about this problem. I hope that if you do look at this website, more people are able to take a stand to this problem rather than succumb to it. My conclusion, sorry. So, in conclusion, I believe we should all reach out to each other to create and maintain healthier lives, and so that we're able to live in a world where there are no chronic diseases related to obesity. I believe that if we encourage our future generations later on, then they know that they can live in a world where they're able to do more and be more by being healthier. Thank you.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Jared Kitteringham, and today I am doing my presentation on deforestation. So I remember this one time when I had just come to California. I moved here from Canada, and so my family just wanted to get acquainted with the area. So we went down the coast to Pfeiffer National Park to look at all the redwood trees. And I remember just seeing the size of the trees and how huge they were. And at the time, I didn't know about this thing called photosynthesis, but without knowing that, I just had an amazing love for trees. And then later, I came to learn that they perform this thing called photosynthesis, which is an absolute blessing because it takes harmful carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and it turns it into oxygen, which we need and use. A little bit of history on logging itself and deforestation. It began in about the 1600s, and as you can see here, they're chopping down huge trees, and they started out with just basic saws, as you would, and axes, and it was a very hard process. It required a lot of men. In about 1830, the main place where they exported the logs was actually out of Maine, and the men worked very long and dangerous hours. As time progressed, the process became a lot more mechanized and less men were required in order to cut down trees, which means that a lot more trees were cut down because technology was better. So we should care about deforestation because it destroys animal habitats and increases CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. So some of the problems with deforestation, the main problem being loss of animal habitat. About 50% of Earth's animals require trees as part of their habitat. So losing these trees, look at this little guy right here. Like, that sucks, And losing these trees is killing animals because they have nowhere to go after their home is gone. And it can also lead to animals' extinction. If certain species require trees as their only habitat, then they will go extinct. In addition to this, when you take out trees out of an environment, when it rains, a lot more of the soil is eroded. And so that leads to less nutrients in the soil becomes infallible, and also, trees perform this thing called transpiration, which is where they actually put water vapor into the atmosphere. So with infallible soils and dry air, you'll just be left with deserts that form over time. One of the main opposing points to my topic is the fact that it'll put people out of work. And almost all topics that are trying to alter something, that is something to take into consideration. However, it may take people out of the logging industry, but we have a very, very fast growing renewable energy industry with wind and hydropower and things of that sort. So the solar industry currently employs around 4 million people and growing. So it is a great industry. So it will take people out of their, maybe, you know, what they've known as far as deforestation and logging, but it will bring them, they will be able to work in a renewable energy industry, which will be better for the environment, and it will have more, and it will further support renewable energy resources. So laws must be made at a national level to decrease the amount of deforestation and deter people from deforesting land. In addition, individuals need to stop supporting illegally sourced wood through the items they choose to purchase. So, solutions. One of the main solutions, I was thinking about this, I was thinking about all this complex stuff that you could do, and, you know, maybe like biological modifications to, like, I don't know, fix what's going on. However, just plant a tree. Like, people just planting trees, getting more trees out there, they have a positive impact on the ecosystems around them. They take carbon out of the atmosphere. They're just great. They're awesome. They make the soil more nutrient rich, and they have a great impact on the earth in general. In addition, buying recycled products and recycling yourself, the more things that are recycled, then the less trees need to be cut down to make new products. So that is another great thing that you could do, which is what I am trying to do. And in addition, stop buying things with palm oil. In Indonesia, every hour, about 300 football fields of land is deforested for palm oil, which is an absolutely insane statistic. So when you think about all the bad things that happen as a result of that, you know, that's happening, you know, hourly. So all those animals are being, you know, displaced. So stop buying items with palm oil. Stop buying items with that were sourced from illegal wood, and those types of things. So what I did, which is something that I think was beneficial, was we did an apes field trip a little while back, which was just probably a month or so ago, and we went to a riparian zone on the Carmel River, which riparian is just a fancy word for the ecosystem next to a river. And it had been damaged from kind of floods and stuff like that, and so we went into that area and we replanted it with native species to create a better ecosystem for the animals that are trying to live in the riparian zone. And so I went back and checked on it just to see that, you know, I wanted to do more projects like this. So I went back and checked on it. It was, you know, it was great. It was a successful project. And so I would like personally to do more projects like this, and maybe put an ad in the newspaper in the future if things start going well for people to come and help me on this venture. So in conclusion, it is clear that deforestation has negative impacts on the environment, such as the species being the main one, and by increasing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, which increases global warming. So by stopping the support of illegally sourced wood and palm oil and things of that sort that contribute to deforestation, we can start to reverse the impacts of climate change and preserve this earth for future generations to enjoy its beauty and the innocent animals that inhabit it. Thank you.
So, in the 1600s, Monterey Bay looked very different. There were sea otters everywhere, thousands of whales and sardines and sea lions and harbor seals everywhere. People said that it was hard to boat through the bay because they would just hit whales. They were everywhere. And then the fur traders came, and they realized that there was really a bounty here. And so they used the pelts from sea otters for furs, and they sold it overseas for a very high price. And they actually reduced the population of sea otters to about 50 individuals. And then when the sea otters were gone, the urchins took over, and they created urchin barons by eating all the kelp.
And then the abalone came out because there were no sea otters to eat them. And the abalone divers came, the Japanese abalone divers came, and they just picked them off the rocks. It was easy pickings. And then an algae spread over the bay, and it created this fog that, decreased visibility in the bay to almost none. And biodiversity had plummeted. But thankful to one amazing woman, Julia Platt. She was a woman of the time, and she was told that marine biology is a man's field. And so she became mayor of PG in order to make change. She set aside wonderful underwater gardens that prevented these sea otters and kelp forests from going extinct. This is an example of a food chain that had been collapsed just by one individual. We should care about food chains because in order to sustain enough biodiversity, our food chains need to be strong and healthy. Now, biodiversity is important because it provides natural things like fiber, wood, even medicine, and it also helps maintain a stable climate. Now, humans don't fit into food chains anymore. We have expanded out of that little niche, and now because of technology and tools, we are causing collapses in food chains. One example of this are the elephants. Now, elephants are really, really amazing creatures, and they actually have the ability to take down an entire tree. I mean, look at this. They're amazing. And they actually are keystone species, which means that they are mandatory for their environment. They provide food for creatures that can't reach the top of the trees. And they also disperse seeds to maintain a high biodiversity. But we've been taking them out, and it's causing biodiversity to plummet. Now, this happened again when we took the wolves out of Yellowstone in the 20s, and we reintroduced them in the 90s. And people started to notice that, low to the ground grasses and shrubs, they started to come back. And that was because when wolves are in the food chain, the prey, the deer and the elk, are actually more timid. They'll take a few bites, look up, and check to see if there's any predators around, and then they'll move on. It was actually allowing beavers to have more food. Now, beaver dams are so important to river ecosystems. They actually provide habitat and food for other animals, as well as mitigate the effects of drought, which is very important. They prevent the river from going dry, and the grasses prevent the river from flooding, and it creates this very, very fertile stretch of land along the riverbanks, allowing more carbon to enter the ground, which is very important, especially since we are causing so much carbon to enter the atmosphere. This is an example of how humans can cause a domino effect that can collapse food chains. To fix this problem on a global scale, we need to educate the public about the true scale of the problem. We need to input mandatory education, environmental education for grades K through 12. And this is so important because if we don't educate people, they won't know what's truly going on. And through education, we can inspire them to make difficult changes. Now, government has a different opinion. They think that education is too expensive. But in reality, people from lower income families who go to schools with more funding actually graduate more often than if they go to schools with less funding. And if we are teaching them about environmental science from a very young age, they will be inspired to make changes that are really, really hard. This is me and a penguin. This is Ray. And she is blind in one eye and has cataracts in the other. And so at the aquarium, we teach people about these animals and we teach them to love. And as a volunteer, I represent our mission statement to inspire conservation of the oceans. And that is so important because I reach thousands of people from all over the world and I'm able to inspire them to make hard changes. Solutions are not easy. They're hard, they're big ideas and they take money and time and effort. But sea otters, they relied on one woman, one single woman, to help them back. And then it grew to a small group of locals, and then to a huge team of people who work around the clock taking care of abandoned sea otter pups and releasing them like this. So I inspire you to make changes, think of ideas, and help the future. Thank you.
Hey, so I'm Charles Delap, and I'm going to be talking to you about food waste. So a few years ago, an ad was put out by Ad Council showing a strawberry. It was picked in a field, harvested, shipped, and put in a supermarket. A little boy finds it, shows it to his mother. She buys it for him. They put it in the refrigerator. Forget about it. A few weeks later, find it. It's rotten. Toss it out. And then the screen cuts to black and it says, wasting food wastes everything. And for me, this brilliant kind of points out the issue with food waste is not just the piece of food that was wasted, it was all the energy and resources that were invested into it. So yeah, that's basically the idea. We should care about food waste because it results in the excessive waste of resources that could be used for other purposes. The idea with food waste, it's always kind of parallel to the progress of technology. So it really became an issue during the age of industrialization because improved machinery and agricultural production made food cheaper, therefore easier to buy, therefore people cared about conserving less because they could just buy more. This was very evident during World War II when efforts to ration showed no impact on the household diet because there was sort of this American removal from where their food was coming from, and they were more just concerned with the fact that they had it. And so into the 60s and the 70s, after World War II, the Green Revolution had made food even more cheap, making it easier to consume, and so it's kind of just worsened as time has gone on. The development of the garbage disposal was kind of indicative of this out of sight, out of mind philosophy. As Nathan said, 40% of food is wasted. However, that doesn't really give you a good idea of what it actually means. Of the 1.6 billion tons that are wasted, 1.3 or 81% of that is edible. It costs us 14 trillion square meters, or 28% of all of our agricultural land is used for food that is not used in any productive way. The picture of Lake Geneva shows you that we waste 3 times the size of Lake Geneva in fresh water every year on food than is then wasted. It results in 3.3 billion tons of CO2 and costs us, as mentioned, over $1 trillion per year. The picture on the right with the watermelons gives you an idea that even if in a batch of food, if you have one blemish on one of the products, the entire batch will be thrown out because of, in developed countries, just overly excessive regulation on the standards of food. So, surprising opposition to food waste is that that's actually built into the food economy, and that reducing food waste would reduce economic activity. Think about it, if you conserve your food and you use it more efficiently, you'll want to buy less, therefore decreasing the profit margin of supermarkets, but also decreasing economic activity. There was an estimate of $250 billion, however, this is unsubstantiated and really has no basis. However, there is evidence to show that it actually does the opposite. A study of 700 companies showed that for every dollar that they invested, they saved about $14, and 99% of the benefited from it. Additionally, a study of the first 2 years after a food waste ban in Massachusetts showed that it created over 900 jobs and stimulated $175 million in economic growth. So this is what needs to happen. It needs to be approached from two sides. In developed countries, it needs to be approached from the side of raising awareness and improving regulation on it. In developing countries, it's a matter of improving infrastructure so that it gets to market. So yeah, infrastructure, improving storage, cooling facilities, because the issue in developing countries is not that it's not consumed, is that it spoils before people can consume it. As well as regulating how efficiently it's transported so that it gets to market on time. In addition, regulation, as mentioned, in developed countries so that food isn't thrown away because of, over exaggerated standards, raising awareness so that people are more conscious, and utilizing what food we must waste in a good way, such as compost. So this is what I've done. I put put posters around the trash cans, just kind of raising awareness. I got permission from Lisa Brazil about this. In addition, I conserve at home. I eat out less because eating out causes more food waste than if you were to eat at home. I save my leftovers, I reuse them, try to be as efficient as I can. So yeah, in conclusion, food waste is a significant issue because it's basically we're just tossing away resources needlessly. In developing countries, it's just a matter of improving infrastructure. Here, in developed countries, it's just a matter of making people more aware. Yeah, that's my